Hey everybody, Grommel's here with some more Warthunder air combat. So, after flying the higher tier planes a bit for the last videos, I was in the mood for some lower tier turn fighting, and since the Heinkel HE 112 B-1 was on sale, I thought I get it and give it a try, to compare this later model 112 a bit to the earlier 112A I flew in the past video. And also, since I already have the CAC Boomerang, which is on the same level than the 112 B-1, I thought I'd try that one in historic battles as well, and see how the two tier 4 premiums compare to each other. Well, let's start with the 112 B-1. The B-1 has a slightly more powerful engine than the B-0 in the normal tree, but the difference is not very big. So most of this should apply for the non-premium B-0 as well. Now, the B is of course an improvement of the earlier A model I already made a video about, and the biggest and most obvious difference between the two, other than the B having a fully enclosed canopy, is the wing. The early 112s have a very large wing, similar in design to that of the Spitfire, but with an even larger wing area and a thicker wing profile. Now, that wing and the plane's light weight led to a very low wing loading, making the earlier 112s one of the best monoplane turners in the game. However, the large wing has its drawbacks. The early 112s are slow and they don't roll very well. The B model have a new wing, which is much smaller and has a thinner profile than the earlier gull wings. The new smaller wings create less drag, so the plane is faster, but also the wing loading is higher thanks to the much smaller wing area. So the B is not such a great turner than the A or V, but it is still a good turner. It won't be able to turn with early model Spitfires, but it can keep up in turns with Hurricanes, and it does turn better than Yak 3s, Yak 7 or 1s, for example. Now, because the plane is so light and because of the reduced drag of the smaller wings, the B keeps up energy pretty good in a turn. The roll rate is also better than that of earlier 112s. It is still not great, but enough to give a Spitfire with its bad roll rate some trouble in scissors, for example. As far as armament goes, the 112 has pretty much exactly what the Bf-109E3 has as well. 2 machine guns and 2 MGFF 20mm cannons. Now, at the moment the MGFF are considered to be the least effective 20mm cannons in the game, but still it is a cannon armament at least. I have to say though, I prefer the single high-velocity C30 20mm cannon of the 112A0 as armament over the 2 MGFF of the B. The C30 seems to be more effective, especially against twin-engine planes like the Beaufighter and the A20, which you will meet in high numbers around this tier level. And also, the C30 has a much larger ammo supply and will rarely run out, compared to the 60 rounds per gun of the B model cannons. So, just like when flying the Bf-109E3, you will be down to your machine guns quite often in the 112B. Well then, let's take a look at some fighting in the 112. This is on the Cuban map and we approach the scene at pretty high altitude. An advantage of the 112, as the 109 it was designed with an interceptor roll in mind, and thanks to its light weight it climbs quite well for a plane on this tier. Now, I am the lowest tier in this match on my team, the rest are 109E3 and E1, and on slightly higher altitude than I am. There are several Yak 3s below me, and since I don't see higher opponents at this point, I thought I might as well attack them from above. But just when I roll in to start diving down, a Yak 1 appears from the front. Now, the Yak is of course faster than the 112. But I know the 112B turns better than the Yak, so if he tries to go in a turn fight, I have the upper hand. If not, the 109s behind me can deal with him. So I avoid the head-on and turn around to see what he does. And indeed, he does a high yo-yo and starts to turn, and I can get behind him. You have to be careful in such tight turns not to overdo it and stall, but the 112 stalls very late and gives you a lot of warning before it does. Now, the Yak could get away from me if he dives or when he just keeps going, but in that case the 109s would be able to catch him. I assume that is why he keeps turning. I can get a few deflection shots in and he starts to trail smoke. A sign for engine damage or a coolant leak, so his engine will stop sooner or later. He dives away while rolling. Now, I don't see reason to follow him. Other planes are already on him and I doubt he would get very far with his damaged engine, so I break off and look for other targets. I think it would be wasted time to follow the fast rolling yak down. With its faster roll rate it would be hard to hit anyway. And there are more targets behind me on lower altitude I can dive on. A Yak 7 a bit further away and a Leg 3 coming in my direction. Since the Leg 3 is passing almost below me, I choose it as the next target. A 109 is also going for the Leg 3, but the Leg destroys the 109 in a head-on. The Leg takes some damage as well, as seems, but I don't know how much, so I go after him. The 112 is pretty slow in level flight, though it has a decent straight line acceleration. But in a slight dive it can reach pretty good speeds before overspeeding for a plane of its tier. So even though it won't accelerate too fast in a dive, it can reach a good speed in the end when going downhill. Now, while chasing, you can hear the engine RPM dropping every now and then. That is because the 112's engine is not fuel injected and therefore gets starved of fuel without positive G-forces. A trait I dislike a lot, since my flying style often involves a bit of negative G-forces or flying upside down. I did not adjust my trim for the current fast speed, so I have to push down the nose every now and then, and every time I do, you can hear the engine RPM going down. Now I caught up to the Leg and I get a few hits in, but this costs me the last of my cannon ammo. As I said, the plane does not carry a lot of it, only 60 rounds per gun, and they have a pretty high rate of fire. After this pass I break off, because again there's another plane going for the Leg and he is definitely damaged from my fire and the head-on he did earlier, so I rather look for a more important target. There are a few enemy fighters and bombers behind me over the small port city, so I turn around to see if I can get above one of them. The Leg 3 I attacked earlier is still in the air and turned back towards the fight instead of flying towards the airfield as I expected, so I check what he is doing just in case, but he does not look like he can stay airborne much longer. There is, however, another Leg 3 passing in front of me, and I could see that he is on the tail of a 109 earlier, so I go after him. Not the safest thing to do in this case, but I want to get him off the 109's tail if I can. I have only the machine guns left, but in a low tier dogfight at slower speeds they can still be very effective, since you often have more opportunity to keep the guns on target for some time. I also get lucky and hit the tail control. Now, there's a IL-2 behind me. That was the risk of going straight after the Leg, but he's also on the 109. I take a second to make sure it's an early IL-2 without the tail gunner. I can go straight after it in this case, but if it has a tail gunner, it is the IL-2's 50 cal turret versus my 2 30 cal machine guns, and a more careful approach would be in order. It doesn't have a turret, but the Yak 7 showed up, and at first I thought he was coming for me, so I turned into him to react to the Yak. But he was not coming for me after all, and he's moving away. The IL-2 took the opportunity though to get behind me. I do a split S just in time to evade most of its fire and only take slight damage to the rudder. Now I know from my own experience with the IL-2 that it can be a decent turner when at high enough speed, but he bleeds a lot of speed in a turn, so without altitude to regain it, the 112 can get on the IL-2's tail pretty easy. Luckily for me, the IL-2 does not share the damage model boost of twin-engine fighters, so despite its reputation as one of the heaviest armored planes in the war, it is not that hard to bring down compared to a Beaufighter for example, even with only 2 machine guns. But I am running low on machine gun ammo too now. I hope I can get the IL-2 down with what I have left and then return to base. I do get a few good hits in, but not quite enough to shoot the IL-2 down. I don't know how damaged he is at this point. But just when I want to start heading back to base, another Leg 3 approaches from behind at pretty high speed. I hope that the IL-2 is at least damaged enough that he has to leave the fight and can't get behind me when I react to the Leg 3. I have almost no ammo left, but I can't outrun the Leg 3 either, so I hope I can make something happen with what I have left. So I do a split S to evade his first attack, but of course I can't go offensive from this point unless he starts a turn fight. He's too fast and high for that. But a 109 also enters the fight and seems to be turning with the leg 3, and I hope I can use this distraction to get behind him when he's lower. At this point though, they are still too high for me to effectively fire with the few bullets I have left. Here I make a mistake though. I can see that the IL-2 is coming closer again and that distracts me. I assume the leg 3 is still focused on the 109, so I want to climb a bit to deal with the IL-2 should he indeed come back into the fight. I fail to notice however that the leg 3 has switched targets from the 109 back to me, and by the time I do notice and react it is too late. I can't evade the fire in time and take a fatal hit that takes out my controls. So this fight is over for me. Well, that was some 112 action. Let's take a look at the CAC Boomerang. The Boomerang is an Australian design and the Tier 4 premium counterpart to the 112 B-1 in the British tech tree. So let's compare the two a bit. Both the Boomerang and the 112 are pretty slow in level flight, but the Boomerang is a bit slower than the 112 B-1. The Australian plane has a more powerful engine, but it is also a lot heavier than the 112. The Boomerang is actually pretty heavy for a plane its size. And the radial engine is aerodynamically not as good as the 112's inline engine. Now, because of the weight difference, the Boomerang will dive better than a 112 and keep its energy in a zoom climb up better. The lighter 112 on the other hand will keep energy in turns better, accelerate and climb faster. Now the weight of course also influences the plane's ability to turn. The Boomerang has for its size a decently big wing area, larger than the 112B's wing area. However, with its weight, the wing loading is quite a bit higher than that of the 112B, so it won't turn as well. But the plane is still an okay turner. It can keep up with Lex and Yaks in a turn fight for example, but it is not better than one of them in a turn fight. Now let's take a look at the armament. Most likely the main reason to get the Boomerang. It has two 20mm cannons and four 7.7mm machine guns, all in the wings. That is the same armament than the Spitfire Mark II at Tier 6. Now on paper that looks almost the same as the 112B's armament, but unlike the MGFFs, the Boomerang's Hispano cannons have a much better reputation. The Hispanos have a higher muzzle velocity, which increases the range, makes deflection shooting easier and increases armor penetration. And in general, the Hispanos just pack a bigger punch than the MGFF. They also only carry 60 rounds per gun, so just like with the 112, you run out fast. However, with the 60 rounds per gun from the Boomerang, you usually just get more done. Of course, there is always a bit of luck involved. If you are lucky and you hit something important, a machine gun bullet might do more damage than a cannon shell, but in most cases you get faster and better results with the Hispanos than with the MGFF. That makes the Boomerang pretty much the best armed single-engine fighter at this tier. However, the plane pays for it with otherwise mediocre performance. Well, let's take a look at the fight in the Boomerang. This is a match on the good old Korea map. We start off with a leg 3 that is coming my way. I assume at first that he is coming down for a head-on, so I get ready to avoid it. But instead of doing that, he just passes over me and I go up in an Immelman turn to follow and maybe get in fire position. But before I can do that, I spot the Yak 7 I have overlooked at first coming straight at me, and I have to evade. I played a bit more casual in this match, as I often like to do in lower tier matches, so my situational awareness was not very good in that moment. But casual or not, I don't want to fight the two of them at the same time if I can avoid it, so I dive a bit and move away to see what they do. As I look back, I see a third plane in the area, another leg 3, but he is lower and falling back. The Yak 7 is the closest. Of course I can't outrun any of them in level flight, but I hope that only one of them follows me, or at least the distance between them will be big enough to engage one alone for a bit. If not, I am still very high and I can dive away towards my team that is below me. The Boomerang is a pretty decent diver after all. After I pulled away a bit at the start, the Yak 7, as expected, comes back closer again pretty fast. The Leg 3 is a few kilometers behind him, and I'm not sure if he's also coming for me at this point, but I think he is far enough that I can try to engage the Yak 7 and dive should the Leg 3 come my way sooner than I hope. So, while keeping an eye on the Leg on the minimap, I split S and engage the Yak. He pulls into me and I, as usual, roll and start turning after his flight path before he passes me, while he tries to go for a head-on, to be in a good position to follow after our flight passes cross. This is followed by two scissor-like moves, where I again try to position myself so to follow his flight path after he passes me rather than trying to get a shot, so I can get behind him. Now the Leg 3 is getting closer though, and another red dot as well, so I have only a very short time to fire before I have to evade. I hoped it would be enough to shoot the Yak 7 down, but I can only damage him before I have to do another split S to deal with the Leg 3 that is coming from behind. But I hope he is at least out of the fight. After I pulled into the Leg, I do a barrel roll and go after him. The other red dot turns out to be another Leg 3, but he is going for somebody else. So I can concentrate on my target for now. I do have to keep an eye on the map though, should he turn around. Now the Leg is faster than me and I can't really get as close as I would have liked to fire, so I take a few shots before he gets even further away, and then I stop to look around as I see a red dot appear close to me again. I check above me first, as the target from above would be a bigger threat, but the dot close to me is far below. Another dot further to my rear turns out to be a Leg 3 behind me, but he is slower and already has a plane on his tail, so I focus on my target again for now, which I assume will try to attack me from above. He does come down and I go into another split S and then loop around to go after him, but it appears he has enough and he is moving away, most likely already damaged from the shots I fired at him earlier. Since he is faster, there is not much point in following, and there is another target coming in range in just that moment anyway, the Leg that was going for somebody else earlier. It looks like he is still on this guy's tail, so I go after him. He is focused on his target, so I can get in fire position pretty easy and fire a machine gun burst after him. I simply forgot to press the cannon trigger as well. That is what you get for flying machine gun only planes like the Thunderbolt and Mustang for too long. But the machine guns did a good amount of damage and he's trailing smoke. And I give him another few bursts with the cannon as well. After my last salvo it appears he is going down, but I still see some red dots and I'm not 100% sure what all of them are at this point, so I don't follow him down. It turns out though that all the planes are taken care of. The last dot close to me is a shot down plane that still appears on the minimap. So we are done here. Well, that was some Boomerang and HE-112B footage, and this is it for this video. As always, I hope it was entertaining, thanks for watching and maybe I'll see you next time.